Let's get some more on all these dramatic developments that are unfolding right now. I want to bring in retired U.S. General David Petraeus. He's the former CIA director, the former commander of the U.S. military's Central Command. General Petraeus, thank you so much for joining us. As we see these devastating images from this latest deadly Russian strike on Ukraine, how do you expect the Wagner mutiny will influence Putin's approach to this war in Ukraine?
Well, I think the central issue here is that Putin and his military have lost quite a capable force. Keep in mind that the only success in the winter offensive that was concluded a couple of months ago was that achieved by the Wagner Group when they took Bakhmut. Terrible losses in doing so, but again, they did actually achieve the objective set out for them. That force has now been withdrawn from the battlefield, and now it's no longer an option of bringing it back into the fold. And depending on how large you assess that was, the numbers go as high as 25,000, some also a good bit lower than that. Those forces are no longer available. Prigozhin himself is no longer available. For all of his thuggish acts and so forth, he was on the front lines. He was with his soldiers. And by the way, that thuggish approach had some appeal to those in the ranks and also, frankly, to some throughout Russia. Yeah. So again, that's the biggest single issue right now. The question beyond this is, does this undermine Russian morale? Prigozhin's criticisms of the Minister of Defense, Chief of the General Staff, the decision to launch the war, the way the war was being conducted, all of which, of course, enraged Putin in the end. When this gets to the soldiers, will it cause them to question what it is that they're doing? And then can the Ukrainians capitalize on this? They've been conducting all of these probing attacks, reconnaissance and force, positioning these new armored brigades that are full of the Western tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. Can they then capitalize on this, crack the Russian lines, force the Russians to start moving in response to that, and then really build on that and generate momentum that could ultimately allow them to cut that ground line of communication from Russia through southeastern Ukraine to Crimea?
I thought it was interesting today, General, that Putin in his remarks, his public remarks, he tried to shore up his hold on power, but he also admitted that the Russian state funded the Wagner Group to the tune, he said, of about $1 billion just in the last year. How significant is that, and could it actually wind up backfiring on Putin?
Well, I'm sure he mentioned, again, as Dmitry suggested, this could be grounds for an investigation. By the way, I'm not sure that that was necessarily funding for the Wagner Group per se in entirety. I think some of it also was literally that the Wagner Group, that Prigozhin himself had contracts for life support for the Russian forces. So this denies him that part of his revenue. Of course, the decision by the Minister of Defense to force the Wagner Group soldiers to sign contracts with the ministry rather than to stay under the Wagner Group, that was another essentially existential threat to Prigozhin that angered him and forced him, or led him to impulsively decide to conduct this mutiny until, of course, he was 2 hours away from Moscow with his forces and realized this wasn't going to turn out very well, and he took the deal that was offered to go into exile in Belarus. One additional point here, I'm sure that there's a lot of uncertainty in Putin's mind about whether he still wants Prigozhin to be the head of the Wagner Group, albeit outside Russia and Ukraine. The actions of Wagner, as you know, have been very helpful in Syria, to a degree in North Africa, certainly in West Africa. It's also enriched, again, Prigozhin and enabled him to fund the Wagner Group. But I don't think that without a succession plan, that they necessarily want to take Prigozhin out of that for fear that that would undermine those particular activities, which are part, in a sense, of the Russian Federation's foreign policy.
Yeah, very important points indeed. General David Petraeus, thanks so much for joining us. We'll, of course, continue this conversation down the road.